Worthless, Aunt Clara muttered under her breath as she strode past me, not even attempting to lower her voice. I glanced up from my sketchbook just in time to see the disdain written across her face before she turned away. I looked down again quickly, gripping my pencil tighter while trying to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. I sat tucked away in the back corner of my aunt and uncle's overcrowded living room, sketching quietly during our family's monthly gathering. All around me, chatter and laughter echoed off the walls as my relatives socialized, doused in a healthy glow of wine. I did my best to make myself small and unnoticed. It wasn't difficult. I'd had 15 years of practice. "Did you see Theo's last game, though?" My mom's voice rang out loudly from the kitchen. 2 touchdowns. They won by a landslide. A chorus of cheers and congratulations erupted in response. I snuck a glance across the room at my cousin holding court over a captive audience, grinning from ear to ear. His Letterman jacket hung proudly over the back of his chair, trophy glinting under the lights. I looked back at my sketchbook just as Aunt Clara walked by again. She stopped short this time, narrowing her eyes as she spotted my work. "Still scribbling away as usual, I see," she noted in a tone that landed somewhere between curiosity and disgust. "Don't you have homework to be doing or something?" I pressed my lips together, staring intently at my paper. "I finished it already." Well, I suppose it's harmless enough," she dismissed with a wave of her ring-laden hand before walking away. The knot in my stomach twisted tighter. Her words echoed in my ears. Worthless, harmless. I knew she thought both about me and my art. Somewhere deep down, I feared the worst part was she could be right. I jumped as a gentle hand grasped my shoulder. I looked up to see Uncle Max's kind eyes peering down at me through his thick glasses. "Don't listen to her, Lila," he said softly. "I think what you create is lovely." I managed a small smile in return, comforted more by the solidarity of his gaze than the compliment itself. Uncle Max was the only one who ever bothered to look closely at my drawings. He seemed to understand the pangs of being overlooked amid the symphony of other people's noise. As he gave my shoulder a supportive squeeze before walking away, I realized this monthly gathering marked the 3rd in a row he had offered me those same gentle words. Don't listen to her. His reassuring gestures were becoming something of a ritual, I mused. One I appreciated more deeply each time. The lively hum of the party clambered on around me, but I felt cocooned by Uncle Max's kindness. I allowed myself to become reabsorbed by the strokes of my pencil, applying darker depth and definition to the portrait emerging on my page. I didn't hear Aunt Claire approach until her shadow was upon me. "I swear, Lila, it's like you live in your own little world sometimes," she scoffed, craning her neck to catch a glimpse of my work. "What are you making that's got you so tuned out anyway?" Before I could respond, she snatched the sketchbook from my lap, already laughing. "Oh, honey, when are you going to grow up?" she cried loudly, her shrill voice cutting through the din. "You can't pay the bills with silly little doodles like this." Faces turned in our direction as heat flooded my cheeks. I stared hard at the floor, willing myself not to cry as a few stray snickers arose. Aunt Clara carelessly dropped my sketchbook back in my lap and strode away, gravelly laugh still spilling from her lips. "Why put in so much effort for something so worthless?" she called over her shoulder. The words pierced my fragile pride, every letter another knife twist to my heart. I hugged my sketchbook tightly to my chest, barely holding back tears. Maybe she was right after all. "Pass the potatoes, please," Aunt Clara demanded, her shrill voice cutting through the chatter around the dinner table as she leaned back in her seat. I quietly handed her the platter, avoiding eye contact and hoping to avoid provoking another of her cutting remarks. It was Thanksgiving, after all. The one day of the year our family insisted on coming together despite the simmering tensions. My hope of getting through dinner unscathed was short-lived. As usual, the conversation quickly turned to comparing my lackluster achievements to Theo's latest accolades. Theo made varsity quarterback as a sophomore. Uncle Ralph boasted loudly between bites of turkey and stuffing. Youngest one in years. "He's the real deal." A round of hearty congratulations followed as Theo grinned, basking in the glow of adoration and free-flowing wine. "I told you he'd be the star of the family," Aunt Clara joined in gleefully. "Brains and talent, he has it all," Not to mention that beautiful girlfriend of his. She let out an exaggerated sigh. My, they will have the cutest baby someday. Can't you just picture it? More laughter and smiles of agreement rippled around the long table. I sank lower in my chair and pushed a few peas around my plate, face burning. His life did seem pretty perfect, I admitted resentfully to myself. Quarterback, straight A's, leggy blonde doting on his every word. With a dejected exhale, I let my eyes wander around the room, carefully avoiding the golden boy himself. As an involuntary reflex, my gaze landed on my sketchbook, peeking out from my bag in the corner behind Uncle Max's wingback chair. Just like its owner, tucked away, forgotten, worthless. At that moment, Aunt Clara's grating voice cut through my gloom. It's such a shame not all young people live up to their potential. My eyes snapped to hers at the other end of the table. Her expression feigned sympathy, but I saw the malice flashing behind it. Poor Lila just drifts through life. I don't know how she'll ever amount to anything meaningful without some sparks flying up in that head of hers. Cold dread crept down my spine at the thinly veiled insult. Before I could open my mouth to respond, I felt a large hand firmly grasp my knee under the table. Uncle Max subtly shook his head, silently warning me not to engage. I bristled in frustration but held my tongue. Max gave my leg a supportive squeeze before removing his hand. Well, what about David? Aunt Edna chimed in nervously, attempting to reroute the conversation down safer terrain. How's that mathematics doctorate coming along? As the attention shifted, I quietly excused myself from the table. I strode swiftly to the corner and snatched up my sketchbook, fleeing to the dark solitude of the back porch. The cold night air bit at my wet cheeks, but I paid it no mind. I sank down on the porch steps, angrily swiping away tears. How dare she? I fumed, hands clenching and unclenching. Who is she to assume she knows my potential? After several shuddering breaths, my rage began to morph into despair. What if Aunt Clara was right? Maybe I would never amount to anything. I gazed forlornly down at my latest sketch, a portrait of Aunt Edna. The intricate details in her kind, wrinkled face had taken me hours to perfect. But what was the point if no one cared? It was worthless, just like me. A warm weight settled around my slumped shoulders, Uncle Max's wool coat. He eased down next to me with a soft groan, eyeglasses glinting in the moonlight. We sat without a word for several moments, my uneven breath sounding loud in the stillness. Finally, Max broke the heavy silence. Don't listen to her poison, Lila, he urged gently. She's just threatened by what she can't understand. He tucked a stray lock of hair behind my ear. But I understand, and I believe your art means something, just like you do. Tears spilled down my face once more, but this time they were tears of gratitude. I slipped quietly out the back door into the crisp night air, carefully closing it behind me before the sounds of the boisterous family gathering could follow me outside. I shrugged my jacket tighter around my shoulders against the chill. Autumn leaves crunched under my shoes as I made my way across the wide back porch and settled onto the wooden steps. Uncle Max and I had taken to meeting here, outside the stuffy, chaotic warmth of my aunt and uncle's home, where the family parties always took place. Here we could talk freely without judgmental ears listening in. Over the last few months since that painful Thanksgiving dinner, Max had become my ally and confidant. The back door creaked open, and I looked up to see Max's tall frame silhouetted in the golden light. He held up the pleated paper bag, clenched in his wrinkled hand, and waved it with a triumphant grin as he eased himself down beside me. Got them! Had to fight off Martha for the last package. He chuckled in his warm, gravelly tone. He pulled out 2 large sugar cookies, handing me one. I bit into the sweet icing with delight. Thanks, Uncle Max. You're the best. He smiled, his kind eyes twinkling behind his glasses in the dim glow of the porch light. I know they're your favorite. I figured you deserved something sweet after all that bitterness earlier. I sighed, smile fading. She's just never going to accept me, is she? Max shook his head. Oh, don't worry about Clara. She's set in her ways, but she's all talk. He gave my shoulder a reassuring pat. Now tell me what you've been up to. My mood lifted instantly. I applied to the Ridley Art Academy summer program. It's only a few weeks. But they have these amazing classes, and... Max held up a hand, eyes widening in surprise. Applied? Have you told your parents about this? I bit my lip, smile disappearing. No. Mom agrees with Aunt Clara that art is just silly hobby. They'd never take it seriously or support me. Max frowned, leaning back against the porch railing. He seemed to be turning something over in his mind. Lila, he finally said, your art, your dreams, they matter. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. He paused, brow furrowing in thought. In fact, I'd like to help, if you'll let me. I stared, confused but intrigued. Help how? Well, clearly, Clara controls the family purse strings, but there are other resources. He reached out and took my hand, giving it an encouraging squeeze. Let me fund your art academy tuition, anonymously, of course, he added with a conspiratorial wink. It can be our secret. My eyes widened in disbelief. What? Uncle Max, that's incredibly generous, but I could never ask you to. He held up a hand. You're not asking, I'm offering. I believe in you, Lila, and I want to invest in that talent of yours before anyone tries to snuff it out. His words brought tears to my eyes. After years of discouragement, someone was finally taking me and my art seriously. I threw my arms around his neck in an impulsive hug. Thank you, I choked out through my tears. I promise I won't waste this opportunity. Max chuckled, patting my back gently. Of course you won't. I expect a full portfolio of new pieces when you get back. He pulled away, holding me by the shoulders and gazing at me intently. Just promise me that from now on, you'll start listening to your own voice instead of theirs. Deal? I took a deep breath and wiped the remaining moisture from my eyes, feeling as if a tremendous weight had been lifted from my soul. Deal? Deal. I crept up the creaky attic steps as stealthily as I could, clutching my latest art supply store purchase. Even with Uncle Max generously funding my artistic pursuits in secret for the past few months, I still felt like a fugitive, sneaking around behind my family's back. But the flush of excitement I felt unboxing shiny new artist pastels made the whole cloak and dagger act worthwhile. I had discovered I loved working with color almost as much as Mom disapproved of my artistic dabbling, as she called it. I smiled to myself, lifting the basement trapdoor slowly. Better to ask her forgiveness later than permission now. Just as the door was about to latch silently behind me, a shrill voice bellowed up from below. Lila Grace, what in heaven's name are you doing up there? Aunt Clara's harsh tones echoed off the attic walls, causing me to jump. The pastels tumbled out of my hands, clattering down the steps along with my heart. Nothing, Aunt Clara, I stammered, scrambling to collect my forbidden treasures strewn across the aging floorboards before she ascended. My efforts were in vain, however, as her heavy footsteps soon thudded behind me. I wheeled around to find Clara glaring down at the vibrant sticks gripped in my hands, eyebrows raised. Wordlessly, she extended her palm. Sheepishly, I handed her the receipt, clutched in my other hand. Squinting through her bifocals, she examined it for several moments while I held my breath. $84.76, she finally exclaimed. You spent nearly $100 on coloring sticks? They're oil pastels, I corrected under my breath. Her sharp eyes snapped to mine. What was that? I shrank back against the chill wall. Nothing. I just used some extra babysitting money, that's all. Seems like quite a lot of babysitting, she said skeptically. And just what do you plan to do with these anyway? Before I could respond, the attic door unexpectedly swung open. We both turned to see Uncle Max mount the last step, slightly out of breath. There you both are. They're asking for you downstairs, Claire. He addressed my aunt lightly, but his eyes remained steadily locked with mine. Clara glanced between us, lips pursed in suspicion, but she merely let out an impatient huff before tossing the receipt to the floor. We're not done discussing your little shopping addiction, young lady, she snapped as she brushed past Max. Once her footsteps retreated, I let out the breath I had been holding. Thank you, I exhaled with relief. Max brushed aside my gratitude with a wave of his hand. Don't worry about her. Yet behind his casual tone, his brows knitted with concern. I sighed, sadness suddenly deflating my mood as I sunk down onto an old cedar chest. She's right, though. I can't keep sneaking around like this forever. I lifted my gaze to meet my uncle's kind eyes. Especially using money you work so hard for. It's too much, I confessed softly. Max crossed the room and crouched down in front of me, gently cupping my chin in his aged hand. Nonsense. That light I see ignite in you when you create is worth every penny. Don't let Clara make you feel otherwise, he urged. His voice took on an icy edge. And don't you dare give up. My eyes misted over with emotion. I covered his sturdy hand with my own trembling one. I won't, I promised in a whisper, as long as you believe in me. Max smiled then, a smile so warm and full of affection that in that moment I felt I could conquer anything. I paced the threadbare living room carpet, absently winding a lock of hair around my finger. The early morning sun streamed in through the crocheted curtains, glinting off the crystal vase on the coffee table. Usually the colorful wildflowers Aunt Edna lovingly arranged lifted my mood, but today I barely noticed them. "What's got you wearing a groove into my rug so early, child?" I spun to find Edna peering at me curiously from the doorway, already impeccably dressed for the day ahead despite the early hour. I smiled weakly, clearing my throat. "Just thinking about the regional young artist competition," I explained, aiming unsuccessfully for a casual tone. "The application deadline is at the end of the week." Edna nodded knowingly as she settled herself onto the overstuffed sofa. "Clara still refuses to support such nonsense, She made air quotes with her manicured fingers, eliciting a small chuckle from me despite the circumstances. My fleeting laughter quickly faded back into a grimace. "She said if I waste my time entering, I'm also wasting her money. Basically, she's threatening to cut me off if I apply." My shoulders slumped dejectedly at the memory of my aunt's cruel ultimatum from the night before. Before the defeat could fully settle across my face, I felt Edna's graceful hand under my chin, gently tilting my eyes back up to meet her earnest gaze. "Lila, has Clara ever created anything of beauty or value in her entire life?" she asked pointedly. I slowly shook my head, confused but captivated by the sudden fire in her tone. "No. Yet for some bizarre reason, she still believes she is entitled to have authority over yours," Edna continued. Her eyes softened then, brow creasing in motherly concern as she brushed a loose strand of hair behind my ear. "Promise me you won't allow her to dictate your worth, sweetheart," she implored. "Don't sacrifice your talent to satisfy that bitter, jealous snake of a woman. She doesn't deserve that power over you." I blinked back the hot tears suddenly burning behind my eyes. Overcome with emotion, I wrapped my arms around her slender shoulders. "Thank you, Aunt Edna," I whispered into her soft gray hair. In response, she squeezed me tightly, patting my back with her smooth hand. As we finally pulled apart, I caught sight of Uncle Max standing quietly in the doorway behind us. Our eyes met, a silent question hanging between us. "Well, what now?" I took a deep, shaky breath. Hope and fear dueled within me. But seeing the unwavering conviction shining from Max's gaze, I knew I only had one real option. I turned back to Edna with newfound resolve. "You're both right. She doesn't control me. I'm submitting my portfolio, with or without her approval." A slow grin spread across my uncle's wrinkled face. Edna let out a delighted laugh, lightly swatting my knee. "Atta girl!" Max pronounced proudly. He gestured to the unseen painting upstairs that he had secretly financed for my application. "Now, let's make sure they see exactly what they'll be missing out on." Buoyed by their belief in me, I marched from the room with fresh purpose fueling every step. I was through hiding myself and my art away. For the first time, I felt brave enough to stand up for my dreams, no matter the cost. I took a deep, centering breath as I pushed open the tall glass gallery doors. The familiar smells of paint, turpentine, and fresh lacquer washed over me, instantly sparking my creativity. I felt at home here among these floors and walls that showcased artistic vision instead of suppressing it. Unlike my own home, I thought ruefully. I wound through the maze of partition walls displaying the regional young artists contest submissions, searching for my collection. My heels clicked crisply on the polished concrete floors, echoing through the cavernous space. Despite having captured first prize in the competition last month, the thrill of that victory had been short-lived. Oh sure, Edna and Max had celebrated exuberantly on my behalf, toasting my talent with a bottle of contraband champagne, but my parents could barely mutter a half-hearted congratulations through tight lips. Mother refused to even glance at the museum passes and tuition voucher the contest awarded me. And Aunt Clara, she had flown into such a jealous rage when she learned of my win that she stormed off in disgust, vowing to never speak to me again. Her reaction still stung, marring what should have been a shining moment of validation. I rounded a corner, and there suddenly were my paintings, a collection of vivid, abstract cityscapes titled Overlooked Beauty. I traced a gentle finger down the gilded plaque bearing my name, allowing myself a small, satisfied smile. No matter their reaction, this was still an incredible honor at just 18. These pieces represented my true vision, not anyone else's expectations of what art or my future should look like. My smile slipped as footsteps echoed behind me, followed by a grating chuckle that could only belong to one person. I steeled myself as Clara's scowl appeared over my shoulder in the painting's reflective glass. "Well, it's about time you grew up and started painting something worthwhile," she proclaimed with begrudging approval. Her critical eye assessed the building's luminous geometries and brooding alleyways. "At least these I can actually recognize as art, instead of that avant-garde nonsense you usually dirty a canvas with." I clenched my fists behind my back, holding back the acid retort on the tip of my tongue. As I met her baleful gaze in the glass, I realized defending my work was no longer needed. The prize ribbons did that for me now. I simply cleared my throat and gestured to a nearby painting of a crumbling liquor store glowing vibrantly against a stormy sky. "The buildings no one else notices often hold the most beauty inside," I offered mildly. "It's all about perspective." Clara narrowed her eyes, processing the subtle meaning behind my words. Before she could supply a scathing rebuttal, however, Max suddenly materialized beside us. "There you both are. Lila, the gallery director, is looking for you," he interjected smoothly, placing a proprietary hand on my shoulder. "The mayor wants to discuss commissioning a city mural. Shall we?" He guided me away without another glance at Clara's dumbfounded expression. As we walked, I felt lighter and more self-assured than I had in years. The Aunt Claras of the world would always try to hide my shine out of jealousy. But it was getting far harder to dim my inner light these days, especially with Uncle Max so devoted to stoking my creative fire. A waiter crossed in front of me, obscuring my view of the gallery's entrance for a moment. I tracked him impatiently with my eyes as he wove through the well-dressed crowd, offering champagne and hors d'oeuvres on a silver platter. When he finally moved aside, I caught sight of Aunt Clara making yet another dramatic entrance. I grimaced to myself behind my own champagne flute. Trust Clara to be fashionably late to an event celebrating someone else's success. She glided into the gallery in a slinky black dress more suited to a cocktail party than an art show, air-kissing the room as all eyes turned to admire her. I noticed more than a few men's gazes linger a bit too long on her overly accentuated curves as she held court. "Quite an eye-catching woman," Max commented discreetly as he appeared beside me, following my irritated gaze. "She knows it too," I muttered before taking another sip. "But let her preen. Tonight is about my art, not her." Max smiled and clinked his glass gently against mine. "I'll toast to that." Any further conversation was interrupted by the gallery director's amplified voice welcoming the crowd. I thanked her politely as she congratulated me on the turnout and praised my evocative urban scenes. As she moved away to confer briefly with the curator, Clara slinked up in her wake. "Well, congratulations, dear," she purred with mock sincerity, air-kissing my cheek. "Who knew your silly little pastime might actually lead somewhere?" Her patronizing smile didn't reach her eyes. I suppose beauty is subjective after all. I resisted the urge to wipe off her cloying lipstick. "How gracious of you to come, Aunt Clara," I replied evenly instead, "since I know how subjective creative pursuits can be for you." Clara's painted smile faded slightly. Before she could supply what was surely a scorching retort, the director returned to the microphone, bringing the chatter to a close. "Again, we are so pleased to showcase this promising young talent's unique perspective," she said, gesturing toward me. "It's clear Lila has a fresh, meaningful artistic vision, one that her Uncle Max should be very proud of cultivating." Murmurs of appreciation echoed from the audience along with a smattering of applause. Clara's head swiveled sharply between me and Max. Under the weight of her glare, understanding visibly dawned across her primped features, followed swiftly by outrage. But before she could cause a scene, I stepped forward, holding up a gracious hand to acknowledge the accolades. "Actually, my Aunt Clara deserves quite a lot of credit for the inspiration behind this collection," I interjected smoothly into the microphone. "In fact, the title, Overlooked Beauty, is an homage to her unique, perspective on my creative potential over the years. I turned to lock eyes with Clara, whose face had turned nearly purple. But true vision lies in those willing to look closer and nurture unseen gifts, not suppress them, regardless of popular opinion. I smiled benignly. Don't you agree, Aunt Clara? Her mouth opened and closed like a gasping fish under the weight of too many eyes and the hidden accusation in my words. For once it seemed Clara had no clever retort or searing glance to offer in return. I smiled wider. I thought so. Cheers to fresh vision. Then, I declared brightly, raising my glass. The crowd, oblivious to our true conversational undercurrents, echoed my toast eagerly, much to Aunt Clara's dismay. I stepped back to scrutinize my latest mural sketch, pencil smudges staining my hands. The city council had commissioned a stylized landscape to adorn the community center's remodeled facade. I wanted it to capture the neighborhood's vitality and cultural roots. As I reached for a rag to wipe the charcoal from my fingers, my phone vibrated loudly against the work table. I smiled involuntarily when I saw Uncle Max's face flash on the cracked screen. "Working hard as always," he exclaimed when I answered. His warm approval still caused a glow of pride to swell in my chest. "Just trying to do justice to the Irvington district," I replied, holding up my drawing to the light. "But it's getting there." "Well, make sure to take a break soon to eat," Max gently scolded. "We need to keep that brilliant artistic mind of yours fed, after all." I laughed. "I will, and thank you, Uncle Max." "You can thank me by letting me take you out tonight to celebrate properly," he insisted. "The whole family is getting together at Ambrosia, and I want to toast my world-famous niece." My smile faltered slightly. World-famous might be stretching it a bit, and honestly, I'd rather skip another tense family dinner if it's all the same to you. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. I instantly regretted declining his sweet offer, but the idea of facing Aunt Clara and her scorn even now, months later, still made my stomach turn. The wounds from her resentment ran deep. Max cleared his throat gently. "Well, I understand if you're still feeling raw, but for what it's worth, Clara has been trying to make amends lately." I snorted in disbelief. "Clara doesn't do amends." "I'm serious," Max insisted. "She knows she behaved wretchedly. Don't you think she at least deserves a chance for old time's sake?" I bit my lip, considering. The genuine entreaty in his voice gave me pause. And he had a point. Holding grudges had never been in my nature. I sighed deeply. Okay, I'll be the bigger person, but I'm not promising anything more than basic civility." Max chuckled, clearly pleased. "That's all I ask. I'll swing by at 7 to get you. See you soon." I set down the phone with a reluctant smile. One tense dinner couldn't derail my newfound creative joy and confidence, and if Aunt Clara was genuinely ready to bury the hatchet, then maybe, just maybe, it was time I did too. After changing into a smart blouse and slacks, I gave my hair a final fluff in the hall mirror right as the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath, sent up a quick prayer for patience, and went to greet my uncle. To my surprise, however, Aunt Clara's perfectly made-up face peered nervously at me instead when I opened the door. "Oh, good, you're home," she exhaled, clearly relieved. She smoothed her hands down her simple black sheath. "I was hoping we could talk privately before dinner." I stared wordlessly as a contrite Clara glanced at her heels. "May I come in?"